The critique that I read was Portia's Ring, Unruly Women in Structures of Exchange in The Merchant of Venice by Karen Newman. First, we're going to define feminism. It can be defined in two different ways. The theory of political, economic, and social equalities of sexes, and organized activity in behalf of women's rights and interests. Merriam-Webster. Is Portia a feminist? When it comes to terms of feminism, it can be difficult to label Portia. Exploratory Shakespeare says, is Portia a feminist? She is shrewd, calculating, and does not exhibit similar characteristics of female characters in Shakespeare. It is difficult to label her as a feminist because her destiny is firmly in the hands of the patriarchal system around her, and instead of fighting the system, she manipulates it for her own self-interest. Exploratory, 2015. Shakespeare created a resilient woman who knew her own worth. Labeling Portia as a strict feminist does not seem to be completely accurate, though. She seems to be so much more than that. Carvella points out that Portia is more of a radical feminist. A radical feminist can be defined as a woman who essentially believes that they are oppressed on the single idea that the gender of a woman is inferior, and it can be considered that to alter one's gender would be a radical feminist activity. Carvella, 2006. Portia alters her identity so that she will be taken more seriously. This is a classical case of radical feminism. Portia knows exactly how to play the system in order to succeed in the world as a woman. Women back in these times were not quite treated fairly. When they got married, they had to give everything they owned to their husbands, and then they became their husband's property as well. Portia's suitors didn't really care about the person that she was. It seemed to be a common theme for men to want to marry a woman because of her looks and what she owns. Shakespeare says, "Nor is the wide world ignorant of her worth, for the four winds blow in from every coast. Renowned suitors in her sunny locks hang on her temples like a golden fleece." So these men traveled from all over to try for her hand in marriage, but because she was rich and beautiful. None of them knew that she was truly cunning and intelligent. They came literally for her looks and her money. Unlike many women of her time, Portia actually knew her worth. Shakespeare says, "I will do anything, Nerissa, or I'll be married to a sponge." She refuses to marry just anyone to fulfill her father's wishes. She knew that she had to marry someone that she could actually stand to be around. An earlier text we read reminds us that women are trying to stick up for each other in other ways. Wollstonecraft says, "I may be accused of ignorance, still I must declare what I firmly believe, that all the writers who have written on the subject of female education, and the manners from Rousseau to Dr. Gregory, have contributed to render women more artificial, weak characters than they would otherwise have been, and more consequently, more useless members of society." Wollstonecraft, page 588. Although it seems rare, other females actually were speaking out against how women were being treated during these times. Next, we go on to another text that we've read. Women in today's world are able to speak out more without being shunned like in the past. Sixtus says, "I write this as a woman, towards women. When I say woman, I am speaking to a woman in her inevitable struggle against conventional men, and of a universal woman subject who must bring women to their senses and to their meaning in history." Sixtus, page 2040. Feminism is more frequently seen in today's world. Sixtus understands why it is so important to speak out for women now, since women never used to have a voice. Newman says, daughters were pawns in the political and social maneuvers of their families, particularly their male kin. Portia is not willing to be a pawn in anyone's game. She wants to fulfill her late father's wishes, but she actually knows how to play her cards correctly. Women were normally considered objects and not people in these times. Newman glosses over the significant fact that these aims and strategies inevitably allot women secondary status, for it is always the bride, and never the groom, who is an object of exchange among family groups and the means whereby social relations are reproduced. Women had to give up their inheritance to the men that they were marrying. Once they were married, everything they owned became the property of their husbands. I have read The Merchant of Venice a few different times, but I have never read it in this context. When I read the play, I thought that Portia was just acting out, mainly because that women were supposed to act a certain way during these times. I believe that Karen Newman's critique was very beneficial to read. Newman's critique helped me see that Portia was not deliberately trying to go against her father's wishes. She just wanted to make sure she could get what she wanted as well. I think that this critique was very beneficial, and people should read it. And then my references are listed below.